Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Robert and Michael Bever? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Robert Davis Bever was born on September 17, 1996, and was raised in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. He had a brother named Michael John Bever, who was born on November 4, 1998. The brothers lived with their parents, David and April, and 5 younger siblings, Crystal, Daniel, Christopher, Victoria, and Autumn. The family's residence was a 2,600 square foot house at 709 Magnolia Court. David worked in the information technology department of an energy company. April stayed at home and took care of the children. The couple was described as having strict religious beliefs. They homeschooled their children and told them the world was a scary place. Allegedly, David mistreated his children physically and verbally. The family was isolated from the outside world and often stayed inside the house or in the backyard. On the rare occasions when they left the property, the children were often in groups and did not communicate with anyone else. One neighbor reported that when she encountered Michael Bever outside, he stared at her and did not say anything. She was left alarmed and disturbed by Michael's exceedingly creepy behavior. By the summer of 2015, 18-year-old Robert and his 16-year-old brother Michael were entertaining a dark fantasy about committing multiple homicides. They wanted to start living the fantasy at home. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On July 22, 2015, at 11:32 p.m., 12-year-old Daniel Bever called 911 and said someone was attacking his family. In the background of the call, a disturbance was audible, which included screaming. When the police arrived at the house a few minutes later, they noticed blood on the porch and heard a faint voice calling for help from inside. Officers broke into the house and found 13-year-old Crystal Bever severely injured from multiple stab wounds. She would later inform the police that the family had been attacked by her brothers, Robert and Michael. Autumn Bever, who was almost 2 years old, was found unharmed on the second floor of the house. No one else in the house survived. They had all been stabbed to death. Daniel, who had called 911, and his 44-year-old mother, April, were found in the living room on the first floor. 52-year-old David was in a nearby room. 7-year-old Christopher and 5-year-old Victoria were found in a first-floor bathroom. The combined number of stab wounds for all 5 victims was over 100. No single victim had been stabbed less than 21 times. By the time the police arrived, Robert and Michael had fled the house on foot. They were in a wooded area behind the house. At 12:18 a.m., now on July 23, the police caught up with the brothers and placed them under arrest. Here is what the police found during the course of their investigation. Robert and Michael planned their crime far in advance. They collected body armor and knives. The pair had plans to conduct a cross-country killing spree after wiping out their family. They had ordered firearms to be delivered to a local gun shop and 2,000 rounds of ammunition to be delivered to the family house. The ammunition delivery was supposed to take place on July 23, the day after the attack. Based on statements made by Crystal, Robert, and Michael, the police were able to reconstruct the events of the attack. Late in the evening on July 22, all the members of the Bever family were in bed, except for Robert, Michael, their mother April, and their sister Crystal. At around 11:30 p.m., April told Crystal to tell her brothers to clean the dishes. When Crystal walked into the bedroom of Robert and Michael, she found them putting on body armor and saw several knives on the bed. Michael turned to Robert and said, "Should we do it right now?" Robert replied, "Yes." Michael told Crystal to look at something on his computer. When she did, Robert came up behind her and cut her throat. Crystal fought back and was repeatedly stabbed. She ran from the bedroom toward the front door of the house, screaming. She made it outside, only to be dragged back inside the house. Robert attacked his mother, April, stabbing her about 48 times. Christopher and Victoria had locked themselves in a bathroom on the first floor. Michael knocked on the door and said something like, "Let me in, he's going to kill me." So he was pretending that his brother Robert was out to get him. One of the children opened the door, at which time Michael stabbed both of them to death. Michael went to his father's office where Daniel had locked himself inside. Using the same ruse as before, Michael convinced Daniel to open the door, at which time Michael turned to Robert and said, "He's all yours." Robert stabbed Daniel to death. During the attacks, David came out of his bedroom and was stabbed to death by Robert. After killing 5 family members and wounding 1 other, Robert and Michael fled into the woods behind their house. Both Robert and Michael were charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of assault and battery with intent to kill. Even though Michael was 16 years old, he was charged as an adult. Robert Bever pleaded guilty to all counts. On September 7, 2016, he received 5 terms of life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 1 additional life term. All the terms are to run consecutively. About 3 years later, while in prison, Robert attempted to attack 2 prison employees with some type of sharpened instrument. He received 3 more terms of life in prison, bringing his total to 9. Robert better be careful. If he keeps misbehaving, he may never get out of prison, no matter how many times he dies and is resurrected. Michael Bever took his case to trial. On August 9 of that same year, he received 5 terms of life in prison plus 28 years. There's good news and bad news for Michael as far as being released from prison someday. The good news is that his life terms allow the possibility of parole. The bad news is that all his terms are to be served consecutively. Michael will be eligible for release in the year 2233 at the age of 235. The longest confirmed lifespan of a human being is 122 years. Michael is really going to need to eat healthy and exercise if he ever wants to be free. The Bever family house, where the murders took place, mysteriously caught fire in March of 2017. 2 years later, a park was opened on the property. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Both Robert and Michael were interviewed by the police and were more than happy to share the details of their crime. Michael claimed that Robert came up with the idea to commit the murders. At first, Michael didn't think Robert was serious, but then Robert started purchasing items like body armor. The mission of the brothers was to kill as many people as possible. After killing their family members using knives, they were going to dismember the bodies, place the remains in storage bins, and hide the bins in the attic. After picking up the firearms and receiving the delivery of ammunition, the brothers were going to launch a killing spree. Their plan involved driving to a random location, killing about 5 people, then moving to another location and doing the same thing. They wanted to kill at least 50 people, but strongly desired to kill 500 or more. Their mission was to achieve a kill count that exceeded the number of other notorious criminals. The brothers had a particular affinity for the Columbine shooters, Jim Jones and James Holmes. According to Michael, he was motivated by excitement-seeking, whereas his brother Robert's motive was a hatred of society. Michael kept a journal in prison which featured primitive crayon drawings of people who had been killed. One passage read, quote, "Once upon a time, there were brothers named Michael and Robert. They hated their family, so they killed them. The end." Unquote. Item number 2, Autumn Bever, who was almost 2 years old at the time of the attack, was the only family member who was unharmed. The brothers intended on using an axe to decapitate her, but Daniel managed to get a hold of Michael's cell phone and called the police. This disrupted the attack and motivated Robert and Michael to flee. If Daniel had not acted heroically, his brothers would have killed Autumn and Crystal. Item number 3, according to Crystal, about a year before the attack, her brother Michael asked her if she wanted in. Presumably, Michael was suggesting that Crystal could join him and his brother in their homicidal plan. Crystal went to her parents and informed them about the discussion with Michael. She was concerned that her brothers were collecting knives and body armor. Despite knowing about the weapons, and the plan to commit murders, David and April took no action. The couple was more afraid of the outside world than they were of Robert and Michael. By isolating the brothers and promoting paranoia, David and April contributed to Robert and Michael becoming antisocial, cold, callous, and socially awkward. Through their efforts to keep everyone safe, the couple constructed the instrument of their own demise. Item number 4, what type of mental health and personality factors could have been involved in this case? Robert Bever testified that in prison, he was diagnosed with major depressive disorder with psychotic features, post-traumatic stress disorder, and borderline personality disorder. In addition, he was taking medications used to treat schizophrenia. The only information available about Michael Bever's mental health is the initial interest that his attorneys expressed in pursuing a defense based on legal insanity. One possibility in this case is that the brothers were suffering from shared psychotic disorder, which is also referred to as folie à deux and double insanity. Shared psychotic disorder is no longer listed in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, but it is still considered a valid construct. From a diagnostic perspective, it is used in conjunction with another psychotic disorder, for example, schizophrenia or delusional disorder. Shared psychosis typically involves two people, a primary partner who has a disorder that features delusions. These delusions are then transmitted to a secondary partner. In this case, Robert could have been the primary partner and his brother Michael the secondary partner. There are a few reasons to believe that Robert and Michael had shared psychosis. The primary partner often has a disorder like schizophrenia or a major mood disorder with psychosis. Robert was taking medication to treat schizophrenia and mentioned having major depressive disorder with psychosis. Major depressive disorder is a major mood disorder. In cases involving shared psychotic disorder, 90% of the time, the partners are members of the same family. 1/3 of the time, partners are siblings. And shared psychosis is more likely to occur when people are isolated. A few different stressors have been identified in cases of shared psychotic disorder that led to homicide. For example, the partners could have been worried about being separated, or they were facing a threat. Another stressor is the obstruction of the fulfillment of the delusion. This is when the partners perceive others as getting in the way of their delusional plans. Maybe that's what happened here. Robert and Michael shared a delusion about killing people, but the family members were in the way. It's also possible that no delusions were involved. Perhaps Robert and Michael were simply psychopathic. There's no way to know for sure. Now moving to my final item, number 5. When Michael committed the murders, he was 16 years old. In order for him to receive a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole, he must have been found irreparably corrupt or permanently incorrigible. The jury did not reach this finding. They wanted Michael to become eligible for parole after 38 years in prison. They believed that Michael should have a chance at redemption. The judge effectively gave Michael life without parole by making the sentences consecutive, suggesting there was no volume discount for murder. What would justice have looked like in this case? I think the judge made the right decision in this case. Michael may have been the victim of shared psychotic disorder, and he had the low IQ score of 83, but his crime was heinous. Michael tricked his siblings into unlocking doors so he could murder them, desired to cut off his sister's head, planned on making videos featuring his dead family members, and wanted to kill over 500 people. Considering the severity of his crimes, the fact that he is eligible for parole at the age of 235 seems overly generous. Those are my thoughts on the case of Robert and Michael Bever. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.